Alright, so we're back on part 2 of the advanced space shot tutorial using Nuke. If you haven't checked out the first one, I highly recommend that, or this part 2 is really not going to make much sense. So let's go where we left off in the last part, and that was our 3D roto. If you don't remember, we made a backdrop here, and we used a 3D roto tactic to kind of just get an easier job on all of these window frames. And if we take a look at the alpha here of what I was talking about in the last tutorial, it's basically what we're going to be putting back on top of our plate. So enough talking about that stuff. If you needed to hear more about that, you can go to part 1. But this part of the tutorial, we're going to be going over a few things, and that's mainly keying our character out and merging him with our alpha that we did in the first part. So before we just jump in and start keying this, we got to go over a few issues character-wise, as we discussed a lot of these issues in the past in the first part. But let's start with one of the main ones, and that's this middle window here. We could see that his head is going off frame of the green screen, especially right there. And we need to key out his head, so that's not going to really work, obviously. So the best way to go through this is there's two routes I would suggest, is either doing a roto on his head, but you do have some motion blur going here, or since it's not too many frames, going in and just using this green area or whatever's around him and just painting frame by frame here. And I think that's what we should do just because it's so quick, and I think that'll be the best bet to get the blurs right. And for this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to do it, but I will also be providing a roto paint, so you can just plug that into your footage here and, you know, save yourself time, and we can move forward and go do more of the fun stuff like the background. So I don't want to make this whole series just paint and roto. It's not really interesting. Another thing I'll be providing is these 5 window rotos that will be applied on top of the keys. So, you know, if we're going to be working over here, we don't need this keying data on these, as we're going to have 5 different keys going. So as you see here, we have all these little window rotos. These are basic, pretty basic, self-explanatory windows. Another issue that I want to talk about with the paint-wise is, it's not a big deal, but I thought we should tackle it right now, is there's a few frames, 2 frames, with this odd black over here in the highlights. So let's just knock that out real quick. I will be bringing a paint node in with the keystroke P, and we're going to start by just using the standard clone over here. I want to make sure a few of these settings are correct, so single, as we want single frame on the foreground, and we want the opacity at 1. This should be your default settings. I'm not sure if it goes to all for default or single, but we want that on singles. We just want it on 1 frame. So I'm on frame 83 here. I'm going to come in, just do a very basic clone here, and then the next frame, which is frame 84, same thing. Okay, so that was pretty simple. Have that and have that. So now let's move forward and take a look at a frame such as here. So what I recommend is taking your paintbrush here, and we're going to do the same ordeal here. Make sure it's a single frame, set the opacity to 1. And under the color here, default is white. But if I have the dropper here and I hold Command and Shift, we can get this box, and it's going to be a pixel grabber, but not just a single pixel grabber like it would if you just hold Command. If you do Command and Shift, you're getting, what Nuke is basically doing is taking the average of all of these pixels and giving you a solid color, which appears right here. It gives you the color data, which is really useful. This comes in handy big time if you're working on a shot and you need to grab the color and it's grainy, because if I do a single frame like this, I might pick up, you know, if I'm trying to get the green data, I might pick up a piece of red or blue grain, and that's not going to be accurate. Versus this is going to basically counter all of that. Same with any of these wrinkles or whatnot. So you can kind of see here, getting really dark area. Here I'm getting a lighter green, but if I mix these two together, you're getting kind of an average of both of them. So I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to come in here, let's just take a bigger area like this, get that kind of flat green going. I want to uncheck this dropper as we don't need it anymore. make sure we're on the single frame, and I'm just going to kind of come in here and whoops, hold shift to scale it. And what I would do is I'm using a Wacom tablet so I can get a lot more detail going. And we're going to probably just do this a few frames as just to show you, and I will provide you with one that I have that works that I spent more time on so we can move on to other stuff. But basically what we're just doing is trying to get rid of it. And the reason why I'm using this green and not just using an eraser to get rid of the alpha is we want to keep it consistent when we're pulling a key on this whole background. We want to keep it consistent if we're using an IBK or a Primat. We want to keep the edges correct versus just deleting the alpha from the beginning, because that's not going to look as clean. So this is basically the idea we have here. But for this tutorial, I'm going to cancel that out, and I'm going to replace it with the one I will provide. But this is basically what I have going on, and yes, it does look kind of messy, but it's all going to get keyed out and help blend a lot. And little stuff like this, you could see as I'm kind of bleeding into this window here, but this is kind of what I want to explain about our window roto we did in the first part, is we're going to bring that all back. So if that does get chopped off, it won't matter because we'll bring it back on top with our 3D roto from the part 1. So this is kind of what I have going on here. And now let's go to the beginning of the frame. I'm going to hit H for full screen, just cancel this out. And I guess we could start focusing on this window. So the main keyer I think I'm going to use here is Primat, but you can use whatever you prefer. I know a lot of people like Keylight and other keyers. IBK is an image-based keyer, and that one's really good for hair detail. We might use a little, but for the most part, we can get away with Primat, which is a pretty good keyer. So any keyer we're using is going to go after our roto paint, as we want that roto paint to apply to everything, just to keep it consistent. There's no point, the way the node's set up, there's no point in doing this with the Primat first and then painting it out, and then duplicating the paint out multiple times. It makes more sense to just pretend it's part of the footage now, and we're going to plug it in there. So take my Primat here, the foreground, and just gonna start the smart select as the auto dropper. I like to hit D to disable it. Sometimes it gets a little flashy, glitchy, and I'm just gonna kind of do that same average thing with the command and shift and get an average. So I have that. I'm gonna uncheck that dropper real quick, undo the disable, and let's take a look. So if I hit A for alpha, you can see a lot more details. If you're trying to key just straight off this, it might look decent right there or whatever, but it's not gonna, be perfect. We want to hit A for alpha so we can get more into fine details. This next part, I'm gonna just go down. Primat tries to make this pretty simple. They have these little arrows. You just go down the list. So you use smart select. Just gonna give it an establishment of where to start, and we're gonna just do the clean background noise. I'm gonna bring this back on and see how I'm just chopping it back. And here's the other part we got to remember is to get a better key, as this is not a good green screen to work with at the start, which makes it a lot more challenging, is we want to really focus around here and not get crazy accurate over here. Because we got to remember we'll be doing a soft roto on our character, so realistically it's going to be around this rim around here. If we spend all this time trying to get these wrinkles out, we could do it, but we might lose detail on our character. So if you have to pick which one is going to help you more, focus more on here and leave this, exposed, as it doesn't matter. It's going to get garbaged out anyways. So I'm not going to go crazy detail on this keys as for this tutorial for time-wise, but like anything in this tutorial, anything I do, you should really take a lot longer and really do the fine details. So I'm just kind of coming in here, might hit the background. So this is, now I'm holding command only just to get the single pixel, as we can get more detail here. Again, this is one of those things you have to kind of decide if you have a roto from your 3D roto on top of this. We don't have to go crazy on trying to get all of this detail back, as we're focusing only on our character. So for now, if I hit the full screen again, kind of see, this is probably the easiest window to key, as he's not really in it as much. Remember, we don't have to worry about this spot here. I'm trying to mainly get around here. Hit the alpha again. I'm seeing a little more. Is that the correct window? Yeah. Make sure we don't start working on the other window. And I'm going to come in here. Now I'm going to pull that average again. Just lightly. Oops. There. Now I want to go back and make sure I didn't chop a bunch of detail off him. Go back to my clean foreground. Same thing. Make sure it's going around him. So this is when I should have said at the beginning of the tutorial, I'm using the same denoise plate, and working on a denoise plate to key this out is drastically going to make it easier. If you ever work with green screens, they might, through the human eye, look better than this, because this is really not a good green screen. And you start keying and you're getting these nasty dots everywhere in the alpha channel. A good chance of that is the grain. So to have a solid denoiser plugin really goes a long way. And what I used to denoise this shot was Neat Video Reduce Noise, and that was done through After Effects, as I explained in the first part of the tutorial. And it really goes a long way just to help get this a cleaner key. So I'm going to say for the first part there, I think that's going to work for the sake of the tutorial. As I would say, I would go more, I mean, we can go in here real quick and just clean this up more, but I want to not spend too much time on one window for this tutorial. So let's see, we have this. I'm going to go back to my alpha. Now let's focus on seeing this now. So now let's focus on drawing our eye more towards this window, so we can kind of ignore this other stuff. Now these are my 5 windows I will be providing here. So what I'm going to be doing is taking a mask merge. So you just take a normal merge, and we're going to set that to mask. And I'm going to put A on the window and B on our primat. And that's basically taking the alpha from A and applying it on top of B. And you can kind of see where I'm going here is we have this, and we'll basically be taking the same tactic and applying it to the other windows. So for now, this isn't perfect, but let's just start building kind of a node tree to give you the idea of what I'm going for. So after here, I'm just going to add a dot for organization, and we're going to go through the same process. Let's do another primat. Anytime you hold Command on a Mac, when you have a tree like this, you could add dots, so it makes it a lot quicker. Okay. So this one's got a lot of hassle going on. This is probably one of the harder windows. And you can see this is going to have to be rotoed back on, because there's a nasty spill, or not a nasty reflection on this guitar. So there's no way you're going to be able to key this and magically keep that. The only way to do that is just either roto or paint those 5-ish frames or so back on top. Let's take a look. Clear this out. Go to my primat. Do the same process. Disable that. Make sure that's there. Try to get an average going. Yeah, this one's going to be a tough green screen. I'm going through the background noise here. And again here, I'm trying to go the bare minimum around here. We have this nasty light that's hitting him. That's if I start to key it way up here, it's gonna start keying him too. We want the bare minimum around here, and we're just gonna have to focus on doing more of a tighter roto around his hair to keep this detail. So I'm on the clean background noise still, seeing what I can do. And the reason why we really are dividing this into a bunch of different keys, this is the correct way to really key out something more complex, is just unless a scene is magically perfectly lit from every side and every angle, you're going to get different shades of green or blue or whatever you're trying to key out. So a rookie move would be to use a single primat and just go back and forth here and here. I can get a perfect key here, but then he starts to get cut off. So I brain him back, and then this part comes back because I'm braining him back. So the better just to divide these and use either merges or key mixes at the end to brain it, all your little keys into one good key. So I'm going to skim through this in my alpha channel. If you don't know alpha channel, it's A. Seeing a little bit more here. And I'm going to, and when I decide to go between doing the average like this or the single frame, it all just kind of comes down to opinion and stuff. Like here, I might not use the average if I want to bring that detail back. I might just come in with the single pixels if it gets really sensitive like it is right here. So all right. So that looks decent. Like I said, for this tutorial, I could spend all day on these keys, but we got to move on. So that will be our second window. And we have window 2 here. Do the same thing. I'm just going to copy and paste that. No point in doing it over and over again. So let's see. We have our first one, and we have our second one. And on top of that, we will take a normal merge and just simply put them together. Kind of see what's going on here now. We have our keys. We're ignoring all of this because we're going to brain it back on top. And let's just keep going through the list. Same thing. I'll do a primat for our middle. Use dots to keep your organization going. Let's close out all of these. Same thing, I hit disable, and when he's not on the frame, we can get a really good average going. This doesn't freeze on me. Okay, that. Re-enable this. Now let's get him back on the frame. We can kind of see what's going on. Here. Sometimes you can just hit disable if you don't know what you're looking at. Like here, like this is just so much going on. I can't tell if this is part of the background or not. So I just hit disable. I realize it is part of him. So I'm going to see if I can bring that back on top. See if it's doable. If not, might have to fake it. Go back on the background noise here. So like I said earlier, we want to concentrate on where he's at. So if I'm keying here, I can get a decent key, and then he walks away and we start seeing this peak. We're just going to ignore that because that's going to be gone. We're only going to be using it where he's at. So we only need to really focus when he's in action. Some of this I'm probably going to have to clean up later, but we're just going to keep going to build this whole setup. Let's see. Yeah, we're getting a pretty nasty rim around him right now, but for the sake of this, let's just leave it. We might look into adding motion blur back on top and then feathering these edges. So I just want to keep going and move forward here. Take our window, mask that, take another merge, and we're just kind of just going down the channels for our merges, trying to keep these organized. Maybe come in here. I'm just organizing these real quick. So what do we got going? Now we kind of have something going on here. Kind of see what's going on. All right, 2 more to go, and we have to go in and fine tune these. All right, this window doesn't look too bad. We do have a lot of motion blur, but let's focus on that later. Same thing, I'm hitting disabled. I'm going to smart select. I'm getting the highlight. Let's close out these for convenient. Disable that. And looking at our alpha channel, we're working through the alpha here. So just starting to get rid of all of this. See how much we have to get up here. I think his head does go up there if I remember. Oh yeah, it does. So we have to for sure take a look at that. See, I just went from the average up here. It's starting to get pretty tight, so I'm just doing the single frame. Again, let's see if these are in his shot. They kind of are. We might as well try to remove them. Cool. For being a pretty bad green screen, it's surprisingly not too hard to get a fair key on these. I think a good part of that comes from that denoise. If we were working with the original plate, probably be a disaster. Little stuff like this, you kind of have to determine, is it better to key it back on and have a risk of more detail around him, or just leave it like that on the chair and just roto it back on. I recommend leaving it and rotoing it back on. Okay, yeah, that green screen was definitely not as bad. Right there, this might need some frame by frame. It's like 4 frames of that cuts in. We'll see when we get there. Window 4, I will provide these. I'm just going to duplicate this so I can keep the color consistent. Hit the A. Another trick, if you want to connect a node quicker instead of just dragging it by hand, you can hit mask, or sorry, you can hit the node and then hold shift, hit your second node, and if you hit Y, it will connect automatically. Thing here, I'm just going to take this, duplicate it so I get those same dots. Come on. Okay. Let's go down the list real quick and make sure it's looking like what we want. So this is looking correct so far. Let's do that last window real quick. Same thing. Let's go through it. Come on now. So it looks like there's this weird black part sticking out that's not part of the green screen. So I'm not sure if I have this on my original roto, but that does need to go. We could focus on that later. So I'm trying to just get through this as quick as possible. Same thing, hit disable. This green screen is pretty straightforward. It's pretty solid. Re-enable. Through here. Yeah, we're getting some. See, now we're kind of fighting here. We might have to do a second green screen, and I'll show you how to do that. Whoops, it's got a weird bug. Okay, so this is when you kind of start losing on a single green screen, and we want to key out these wrinkles down here, but then we lose his face. And then if I go and bring his face back, we risk these wrinkles. So I'm going to show you how to use a key mix on this last one. So we have we have window 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we can do an individual key mix inside here before mixing all of them. So let's take a look here. We're going to do the foreground. And let's ignore this part right now and just make sure his face is okay. I don't know. See, I'm just kind of going in, just looking for anything that looks odd. Little parts in his hair there. Maybe we can go hold command. So this is when you get best of both worlds here, as we have a decent key here, at least for the tutorial, but we can't get it there. So I want to take this Primat. I'm just going to duplicate it. We'll put it here. Now we're going to ignore this area and let's focus on getting this correct. So I want to see this pillar has this nasty spill. We don't have to worry about that because we're bringing that back on top. This whole part with the 3D roto. So let's take a look here. Yeah. Again, might have to do some rotoing there, as you got just a lot of bad spill going on. We're mainly looking at the body, not as much. Whoa, we got some weird glitch going on. So I'm probably recommend braining this back on with the roto, because I want to try to get a cleaner key around his legs. Because that's one of those things that you have to determine one of these has to be rotoed. Which one's easier? A pillar that's not, or a ground that's not moving, or legs that are moving with motion blur. So I'm picking the pillar. Get the foreground here. Same ordeal. Just trying to really fight these little wrinkles. Alright, well, I don't want to spend too much time on this, so let's just leave it at that and show how to do a key mix. I'm going to close all these out. So we have our lower part here. We could just name that low at the end. Now a key mix is basically similar to a merge, but you have a few things. You have your A, your B, and your mask. So you're basically taking two keys like this, like we were talking about earlier at the big windows. This is a smaller version, as we can get the key looking good here, but we can't there. We can get this one looking good, but we can't there. So we want the best of both worlds. So let's take let's take B to our top part here and A to our lower part. And this is basically saying, take your key from your B here, your Primat here, replace it with A, but only in this area. And what I mean by only in this area is wherever this mask goes. So right now, we still have this, we have the wrinkles. Nothing's happened. This is our lower part, and it's not being affected yet because it doesn't know where to go. But for an example, if I bring this mask on and I pull a roto around this area, it's going to do only this spot. Kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm just a feather. So this is, you can get advance on. You could take your 3D roto and apply it to that, or for this, I'm just gonna kind of go frame by frame, see what's going on here. We wanna, I gotta take a look at that and see if that's part of it or what. Looks like we're still getting some nasty wrinkles. Can't win on this part. Just going in here. So you can kind of see as I'm pulling the mask over there, you can see what's going on. Is it's replacing the part that's no good with what we need. Again, like I was saying right here, this is looking all bad, but we're not even there yet, so we don't need to worry about that because we're going to, right at this spot, it's all about getting this key correct. So for the sake of this, I'll just say I was going to leave it at that, but now this part's starting to bug me. See if I could close these out. Try to get a little more there. Probably with the roto this back on, from being honest, but... And sometimes you want to make sure to either, when you're done, you want to make sure to uncheck this dropper or just close it, because there's times you go to accidentally hit the command and you key something else out. And if you ever want to get rid of your window viewer or your mini single pixel one, if you just hold command and right click, it will get rid of it. So that last one had a little more work, but it's the same ideas. We're just taking primats. This one we just did a key mix, which is something that you should learn. So it's good that we did that. And I'm going to take my window 5, same setup here, same color for organization. I just want to copy paste, copy paste. All right. So now we have a key on all the windows. Not perfect, but just to give you the idea for this tutorial. So I think the next part will be getting a roto on him, a soft roto, and we're going to just take all this information and apply it to the roto, so we're not getting any of this messy key over here, or when he's over here getting the messy key, as we don't need that. We only need to concentrate. As long as this area around him at all times is clean, that's all that matters. We don't have to focus over there or over here. So I'm going to end this part of the tutorial here, as this went on a little longer than expected, but in the next part we will be going over using a roto around him with our key and braining our 3D roto and putting it all together, and we will really start to have a kind of an alpha that will make more sense. So I hope you learned new tricks today that could be applied to your future work. Until next time, have a great day.